Hey everybody, KMO here in my off-brand or unofficial Akira t-shirt. So, a few comments from my most recent video, The Unspeakable Pandemic, in which I talked about how some of the YouTubers that I check in with regularly are having to talk around the pandemic and the lockdown and, this huge thing which is affecting every aspect of everybody's lives, and they can't mention it by name because if they do, their videos get demonetized. So here's some of the feedback that I received in that video. First writes, us doomers are hyped. Finally some return to equality of outcomes as even these creators at the top are affected. Burn, baby, burn. Okay, so this is really not just the topic of this video, but the topic of my life. I am an ex-doomer. A little over a year ago, I took it from being sort of a privately held position to a publicly, not just admitted position, but a publicly exerted position. Like, fuck doomerism. And so here we are a year later, and here's this big pandemic, and, now there are some doomers, because I've been making doomer media for a couple or decade and a half now, and I know a lot of people who are former doomers and like semi-former doomers, and also people who are still thoroughly invested in the idea that the collapse is coming soon. And one of the big psychological attractions of this worldview is expressed right here in First's message. Equality of outcomes. When the system collapses, the people at the top fall the furthest, and they'll be scratching in the dirt just like the rest of us. Well, they won't. They won't. It's just simply not the way things play out. A slow motion collapse, like you could say we've been in one for decades now, clearly it doesn't affect the people at the top. The people at the top get richer while everybody else gets more miserable. So, the attraction of the fast collapse is, well, that process gets accelerated and everybody falls. Well, it's very unlikely to play out that way. And if it does play out that way, most of us will be dead, and we won't get to gloat over seeing the rich and the powerful fall to earth. But some of the creators I'm talking about are people who, they're pretty big. Millions of subscribers, making a lot of money off of this. People I watch in that category, movie reviewers, Chris Stuckman, Jeremy Johns. I like their stuff. Their channels have been really, shifted around because there's no new movies opening in theaters. These guys, they get invited to advanced screenings. They are going to see movies in the theater 2 and 3 times a week, and now they're not. And so they're having to rejigger their whole approach to making videos, but they can't say why. They can't say why they're doing it in the video lest they get demonetized and lose their income. That's ridiculous. And just because they're much bigger YouTubers than I am, there's no schadenfreude to be found there, at least not for me. And not everybody who is affected by this is a big-time player. Like somebody else I watch, just because I'm interested in Puerto Rico, is this guy Hayden. He lives in an inland town, in a small plot. It kind of looks like maybe he's in this one-room, single-room building. He's growing some bananas. His channel is called Vegan Vlogs. But he also seems to be really into fitness now. He's done some surfing videos. He's got a couple dogs. This is the life of this guy who's living, not large on the island, but he's living well on the island. But he does, I'm looking at his channel now, he's got 14,700 subscribers. It's about 10 times what I have. His most recent video, or the one I'm looking at anyway, Stuck at Home While in Puerto Rico, it has 5,000 views. So this guy is not a huge YouTuber, but he does depend on AdSense revenue from, his channel to support him in his, modest lifestyle on the island. He did a video a couple days ago where he's driving around trying to find some greens, and the stores are closed, or the stores that are open have long lines around him. He's not willing to wait. He ends up paying $5 for a head of cabbage after driving around for a long time. The whole time he's driving around, he's commenting on the long lines at the stores. He's commenting on how very little traffic he's seeing on the roads. Not once does he mention COVID-19 or the coronavirus, because if he does, his video gets demonetized. That's ridiculous. Next comment comes from Josh. Josh writes, I agree with you, KMO. It's odd that this run of online writers and Google are not saying COVID-19. You took the time to produce zombie media. You have always been ahead of the curve on pandemic narrative. I have to ask, how odd is it to you to see fairly globally lockstep coordinated measures? To me, the awe comes in the expectation that we must rally a truly global response. You have a few shows on this. So, part of what Josh is talking about here is that I have this long-standing fascination. Oh, by the way, I'm not talking into this. I just push that away. I have this long-standing fascination with zombie movies and, zombie media, because I've read some zombie novels. There was a teleplay podcast about the zombie apocalypse. Lots of zombie media. The Walking Dead has run it into the ground and really, ruined it for me. But still, I have a long time fascination with it. I've made a lot of media on it. I think the thing to listen to would be the very first episode of the Z or Zed Realm podcast with my friend Marty in North Carolina. Another, lifelong aficionado of low-budget horror films, 1970s, sort of shock cinema, and zombie stuff. And Marty and I did this podcast together. The first episode, I just looked it up this morning, we put out in, I think, October of 2010. So this thing is almost 10 years old. But I think in the very first episode, we really lay out our fascination with zombie media. And one of the things that, brings me to it is that the zombie apocalypse narrative, because, the causal factor driving the collapse is impossible, dead corpses coming back to life and attacking the living, or reanimating and attacking the living, because that is impossible, it gives us permission to engage with, the implications of it. What happens when society collapses overnight? How do we then relate to one another? And so, the zombie apocalypse narrative is one way of examining a collapse narrative, and particularly, a pandemic collapse narrative, without actually getting caught up in the realistic details of how it would go down. So I'll put a link to that first episode, that 10-year-old podcast episode. I'll put it in the link, in the show notes or the description for this video. Maybe check it out. You might find that there's something of interest there. But Josh says, what's awe-inspiring to him is the expectation of a truly coordinated global response. So one of the better pieces of zombie media in this whole genre is the novel, not the movie, but the novel, World War Z by Max Brooks. Max Brooks is the son of Mel Brooks, of Blazing Saddles fame and many other, comedy gems from yesteryear. And one of the things that he said, and in his book, unlike the movie, in the movie we have not only fast zombies, but like superhuman zombies that can build 10-story high zombie pyramids, as if they were ants or something. That is not from the novel. In the novel, it is definitely the George A. Romero, slow, shambling, flesh-eating ghouls. And one of the points of the novel, the major themes of the novel, and in case you didn't pick it up from the novel, he's just said it explicitly in talks and interviews, is that the threat should be manageable. The real Pentagon, in the real world, has done exercises and studies and simulations about containing a zombie apocalypse, containing a zombie outbreak, that is transmitted through bites. And they have discovered, or, their exercises have reinforced the idea that it is easily managed if the military and the government takes immediate action at the first signs of the outbreak. If they dither, then things get out of control. And Max Brooks put it like this. He said, "The World War Z was always ours to lose. By default, humans should win in a contest against mindless, slow, shambling zombies, whose only advantages are their numbers and the fact that they don't feel fear or pain. They have no instinct for self-preservation. They will just, walk right into you and bite you regardless of what damage you might do to them." So Max Brooks' point is the zombie apocalypse narrative in general is a narrative of the failure of authority, the failure of coordinated action on humans, the part of humanity. But that's our gig. That is our strength. That is our evolutionary survival strategy, is coordinated effort. specialization of, tasks, the distribution of responsibilities, lines of communication and responsibility that go up and down the social hierarchy. This is what humans do. And we are drawn to the places where this breaks down. Our attention is drawn to how we fail at this task. But this task of coordinated action is what we do better than any other species. You can say humans suck and put that in the title of a video and you'll get tens of thousands of hits. But there are things we do really well. And I'm not at all surprised that, there has been the level of coordinated response, globally, internationally coordinated response to this crisis that we have seen. I'm not surprised that it's fallen down in places. I'm not surprised that, in places, in certain instances, leaders were more concerned with the stability of their own power than they were with protecting, of taking decisive early action. That doesn't surprise me, but it also doesn't surprise me that we're doing as well as we are. Next from Dan. Dan writes, yeah, several creators I follow have resorted to euphemisms and crossing out words in text they presented on screen. I hope the people in the future look back on this time and this platform and wonder why they didn't tell the tube to stuff it and march off to another platform to create their own. I'm going to pause there and say, I have a BitChute account. When I created it, my idea was that everything that I uploaded to YouTube, I would also upload to BitChute, so that if I got, my whole channel got the axe on YouTube, which is entirely, within the realm of possibility, that I would have a backup archive over on BitChute and possibly, a different audience, like not a duplicate audience, a different audience over on BitChute. But I'm just lazy. Once the video is shot and edited and uploaded, and I've created, a brief description of it and possibly a custom thumbnail, I'm just not interested in, going and duplicating it in different platforms around the internet. It's just not rewarding to me. I mean, it's not rewarding financially, but it's also just not, it's not something that I'll do just for the sake of it. Whereas, I've demonetized these videos, but I still make them. I still edit them. I still post them because it is reinforcing. It has some, for me, intrinsic value, which apparently uploading to BitChute does not. Dan continues, I'm ill-informed about other options because I don't rely on monetization from this platform. Have you considered putting your work elsewhere? For example, DTube. What were your thoughts on that? Well, as I say, I have put my work elsewhere, but it's a little extra effort, and I've just discovered over the long term that I don't have it in me to make that little extra effort, at least not on a volunteer basis. And I'm also not anxious to monetize these videos because now that I get paid to do podcasts and I get paid to do comics, coming here to do a free video is something that I can do to procrastinate. It's like I'm not doing the thing I'm supposed to be doing in order to earn money, but I'm still active. I'm still talking to people. I'm still creating content. The fact that I'm not getting paid for the YouTube part of my day is actually, for me, a weird sort of bonus. All right, popping over to email now. So just the other day, I put out a podcast, conversation with an old friend of mine. His name is James Howard Kunstler. And I met him through doing the podcast, and I was attracted to him initially and, approached him for an interview because of a book that he had written back in 2005 called The Long Emergency. Well, he has a new book out. New nonfiction book. It's, a follow-up to The Long Emergency and another book he wrote called Too Much Magic. It is called Living in the Long Emergency. And in the center portion of the book, there are biographies of various people living alternative lifestyles, that Jim notes or thinks as being noteworthy in this time. And the last interview in that section is with me. So someone who would prefer to remain anonymous wrote to me to say, so I have been ruminating on your latest chat with JHK. Thinking about how peak oil anxiety brought me to your respective bodies of work and then perpetuated said anxieties. On the downside, I lost a lot of productive thinking hours. But on the upside, I learned a lot about systems thinking and challenging the confidence of self-appointed experts. The biggest plus I can see right now, though, is having come out the other side of that particular reality tunnel. I absolutely do not think King Corona is the end of the world. Super fucking serious for sure, but not a trigger that will lead us into the apocalypse. Further thoughts. Hubbert's Peak was the first bell curve I ever studied. Pondering or obsessing on it for a good part of the latter aughts and some of the early 2010s has made it easy for me to view other phenomenon through that lens. So the idea of flattening the curve comes intuitively, and taking the steps to do so seems that much more important. It's also easier for me to imagine the economic and social disruption caused by COVID-19 to be temporary, something that will rise, peak, and fall away. Circa 2009, I used to get on the bus and try to imagine that half the people on the bus would be dead in 6 months. I presently shun public transportation, but if I were on a bus, I would be aware that half the passengers will get sick in less than 6 months, but that the majority will recover. The end of civilization, this isn't. Agree, I do. It's not the end of civilization. And even though I am more tolerant now of people who are, monomaniacally focused on this topic, because given the impact it's having on the economy, how can you not be? While I am more forgiving of folks that I formerly wrote off as, opportunistic, parasitic doom mongers, I'm still committed to being a counter voice to the catastrophists. The folks who look at the data and zero in on the worst possible outcome. So circling back around to Max Brooks and the zombie apocalypse, the worst possible outcome is that, human military, human governments, human beings on interpersonal levels, everybody fucks up in the zombie apocalypse, and the zombies overwhelm our entire civilization and bring us down. That's the catastrophe. That's the catastrophic view of how the zombie apocalypse could go. But particularly if the zombie apocalypse were a recurring phenomenon, and that, it was like a repeated, iterated prisoner's dilemma sort of thing, where there was a history. We could look back and see how we did in the last zombie apocalypse to adjust how we adapt to the next one. If that were the case, I think that even with huge catastrophic losses to the zombies, that eventually humanity would do better. And that's really how things go in Max Brooks's novel. In the end, the humans win World War Z. Even though in the beginning, they fuck up so badly, it looks like humanity might go over the edge to extinction. COVID-19, the Wuhan virus, coronavirus, what are they calling it? SARS-2, is not going to be the end of the human species. It's not going to be the end of industrial civilization. It's not going to be the end of global civilization, although hopefully we learn some lessons about being overly dependent on very long, just-in-time supply lines where certain regions of the supply lines exist in places, of authoritarian rule. There better be some changes made, But in the early days, it does seem like the governments are defaulting to very dysfunctional modes. Like the very first priority of the U.S. government was to give unprecedented amounts of money to the largest, most wealthy corporations in this country, just as an opening gesture to say, here, you can have everything up front, no questions, no strings. All we ask is that you let us give the workers a little bit of money, like maybe enough to pay next month's rent and a couple weeks worth of groceries. No more. And you can have trillions of dollars up front for nothing. Just take it. That is this government fucking up the response to COVID-19. But this is an early round, and it is an ongoing situation where there is opportunity to course correct and to learn from past mistakes. I don't see, on the class level, on the class divide, power divide level, I don't see any valuable lessons or course corrections taking place. But on the epidemiological front, I think, yes, the CDC and related organizations they're staffed with the sorts of people, maybe not at the very, very top, but like from the next level down all the way to the bottom level, they are staffed with people who are data-driven, who are empirical in their outlook, and who will course correct as the data directs them to do so. The fact that they're doing that doesn't surprise me. If it falls down in places, that won't surprise me either. But, again, communication, scenario spinning, the distribution of tasks and specialties, and collaborative action on a grand scale, that's what humans do. That's what we're good at. And we're going to remain good at it, and we're going to get better at it in certain domains, particularly when, the importance of doing so is pressed upon us daily. It just doesn't surprise me that we're doing well the thing that brought us, as a species to this point. Okay. A lot going on there. Not sure I could summarize it in a couple sentences if I had to. But maybe you can do it for me and post it as a comment. Talk to you again later.